Good morning. Good morning, commissioners. Chief Moore, Mr. T, well, not Mr. Tinkfake, Ms. Faber, Madam Secretary, Mr. Inspector General Mark Smith, Mr. City Attorney Carlos De La Guerra, and members of the public. Today is Tuesday, August 30th, 2022. It's 9:30 a.m. This is a special meeting of the Los Angeles Board of Police Commissioners. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Good morning, Commissioner Briggs,
Present.
Commissioner Decker, absent, Commissioner Bonner,
Here.
Commissioner Kalanche,
Here.
Commissioner Sobroff.
Here.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. Also present, we have the Chief of Police, the Inspector General, the City Attorney, and sitting in for Mr. Tiefenk, we have Senior Management Analyst Farber. Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We welcome everyone attending this morning. All public comment will be heard during item 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public, you will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board, so you are free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinions shall be deemed off topic, and your public comment period will be concluded. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in one of a number of ways that are outlined on the agenda. At this time, we're going to go to item 1 on the agenda, the report of the Chief of Police. Good morning, Chief Moore.
Good morning, Commissioner President Briggs, and good morning to Commissioner Sobroff, Commissioner Kalanche, Commissioner Bonner. Welcome, Ms. Faber, to the role and to the task today, Mr. Smith, as well as our City Attorney, Mr. Carlos De La Guerra. As I do each week, I'm going to speak briefly on our COVID-19 update, move into significant events, crime, and our personnel picture, if you will. Regarding our COVID-19 update, this past week we saw 44 additional COVID-19 cases. That's a 21% decrease from the week before. Of those 44 individuals that have tested positive for COVID-19, 41 of them have been previously vaccinated for an overall rate of 93% of those new infections. For the city or for sworn and civilian ranks now, since we began tracking fully vaccinated individuals and those impacted by COVID, we stand at 58% of our COVID cases are individuals that are vaccinated for COVID-19. I'm happy to report that with those vaccination rates and with these different variants, that we have no one hospitalized at this point due to COVID-19 infection. We do have 17 long haul cases that continue in our hopes to recover fully from this deadly pandemic. We have 189 of our personnel that are at home. That's an increase of 39 from the week before. And the recovery rate, if you will, on COVID-19 continues to average between 9 and 10 days away from the workplace. In regards to my significant events, I want to comment just on a couple of community events. One is a Latino forum that we held this past Thursday down in the harbor area. I want to thank them for welcoming us there. It was a Chiefs Forum. We had Latino leadership from throughout LA, but there was particular emphasis within the Wilmington community, and we had a good discussion for extended time regarding crime and our deployment capabilities in that portion of the city, as well as our appointing 2 new senior leads in that area. Something I'm taking action to ensure that our senior leads, not just in Wilmington, but across our entire city, are filled at the earliest juncture. I want to thank Commissioner Kalanche for attending the forum as well and participating in the questions and answers and feedback with our communities. It was a good conversation and one I enjoyed, and I look forward to the future. Second event, I want to thank Commissioner Sobroff for attending, and that is our recruit graduation we had on Friday, where we welcomed 27 of our newest graduates to our class, to the Los Angeles Police Department. And the comment I'll make on this is I'll share with Commissioner Sobroff's remarks about high quality, but the concern for the quantity. This class, it represents the second class graduating this fiscal year. And on this Monday, just 2 days ago, just yesterday, we started a new class of 35 recruits. So overall, in the last 3 classes now, we'll have under 100 academy, if you will, participants. And that number needs to be double that. We have room for classes of 60. And as I said earlier, this will be an area that we'll continue to focus on, is increasing the recruit flows to our academy, because at 27 people coming out of our academy and graduating, that is about half of our attrition rate. So that's is where we're actually losing more ground rather than gaining, which is our goal. And I know one that the mayor and the city council supports. Next thing I want to talk about, briefly describe, is a follow-up on a terrible double fatal collision that occurred on the 19th of February. And while it's outside this reporting period, it is follow-up actions that I want to communicate both to the commission as well as to the public. On the 19th of August, at about 4 o'clock in the morning, officers observed in the 77th area uniform patrol a green Cadillac that was driving in excess of the speed limit and had failed to stop for a series of stop signs and a red phase tri-light. Officers attempted to conduct a traffic stop, and as they did so, they followed the individual and the vehicle, chirping their emergency equipment sirens and as well as activating their lights. As the vehicle went westbound on Manchester, the officers activated their full lights and sirens to conduct a traffic stop. As they did so, the vehicle accelerated and attempted to evade the officers. The officers turned off their emergency equipment, and seconds later, the suspect vehicle drove through a mid-phase red tri-light signal at Manchester and South Broadway and crashed into another vehicle that was southbound on Broadway. This horrific crash, which was captured on video from a number of sources, caused a multi-vehicle collision, resulting in the death of the 2 individuals that were within that second vehicle. It was revealed that after the collision, officers immediately requested rescue ambulances to help those occupants in that second vehicle, as well as having South Traffic Division respond and evaluate the suspect that was in that suspect vehicle. It was revealed that it's believed that he was under the influence of drugs, specifically marijuana, and he made admissions as much and agreed to provide a voluntary blood sample, which will be part of this investigation. Due to the influence, in the sense that we were attempting a stop just preceding this collision and the death of these 2 occupants, this became a major collision investigation team investigation. That is a group of highly trained traffic officers and investigators that have specific protocols that are much more in depth in regards to statements and gathering of evidence and a review of the circumstances of this deadly collision. That investigation is ongoing. Additionally, after the on-scene investigation and interviews, 77th Division continued in their investigative follow-up regarding the individuals that were located in that suspect vehicle. And what was found inside that vehicle were receipts and other evidence that led them to contact a business in the Moore Park area of Ventura County, there where they learned from a business owner that there had been a burglary earlier in the morning, and surveillance cameras had captured the images of 3 individuals. The currency and money bags that were recovered from the vehicle, we believe, matches the items that were taken from this business. At the conclusion of the on-scene investigation, the driver of this vehicle, which contained a total of 4 occupants, was booked for 191.5A of the Penal Code, which is felony vehicular manslaughter while DUI. He's a male, black, 20 years of age, and a resident of Los Angeles. Tragically, I want to express to the family of the 2 individuals that were in the vehicle our deepest condolences for the loss, the senseless loss of their lives, as they simply were trying to move southbound and go through that intersection on a green light when tragically their lives were lost to the reckless actions of this fleeing motorist. But we will investigate fully the circumstances of the officer's actions leading up to, during, and immediate aftermath of this collision as to their compliance to the Department of Rules and Regulations and policies relative to conducting traffic stops and or involved in vehicle pursuits, the decision to initiate a pursuit, continue a pursuit, and otherwise. Additionally, I'm aware that the family has expressed a desire for the department to release the available body-worn body worn video as well as digital in-car video that's available. And also, given the questions that the media had regarding whether our officers were pursuing the suspects at the time of this collision, I've made a determination to release a critical incident video. That is being compiled as we speak and will be released, I expect, by the end of this week. And it will contain the available body worn video from the 2 officers that were involved in this chase, as well as their digital in-car video, as well as additional video from the surrounding area where the scene of this collision occurred. Transitioning and moving over to our crime picture next. This last week, we saw a slight improvement in our crime picture, in the sense of our violent crime reduced 2 decimal points, and our same with our property crime. We stand at 11% increase on property crime and a 5% increase on our violent crime. Year to date, we have 263 homicides versus 259 last year. We have 953 shooting victims and versus 951 last year. The month of August has been a mixed bag, where we have seen an increase in the number of homicides compared to the same period last year. We've had 41 homicides in the month of August this year. That number was 33 last year. And as a point of reference, 33 last year was one of the high marks for the year in homicides. However, when we look at shooting victims, we have 10 fewer shooting victims in the month of August compared to the same period last year. So the point of this is that the mortality rate of shooting victims is up. Is that we've had fewer people shot, but more loss of life in regards to into that shooting violence. Most recently, that shooting violence has been centered in the central part of the city. However, just this weekend on the Hollywood Boulevard Walk of Fame, we saw the tragic, what we believe to be an attempt robbery of a group of individuals involving at least 2 suspects, one of which appears to have been shot and killed in the commission of this robbery, potentially by the other assailant or by actions of the intended target of the robbery. This 17-year-old young man lost his life, unfortunately, in this tragic series of violence on one of the most famous walks in Los Angeles and in the region. I want to thank Deputy Chief Blake Chow, the commanding officer of Operations West Bureau, as well as the command in Hollywood, for their ongoing efforts, as well as the support of Councilman O'Farrell and others in supporting additional patrols and additional added presence of policing and our uniform officers in these areas during these late night, early morning hours along what has returned to become a popular tourist attraction and is heavily attended by a number of people enjoying the restaurants and business and establishments along that area. Also this weekend was tragically another multi-6 victim shooting in the Hollenbeck area at a entertainment establishment that we believe was over a dispute between parties known to each other involving a romantic relationship. And unfortunately, a fight that occurred, a physical fight that then escalated when one of the individuals came back with a firearm and began firing both at the intended target as well as indiscriminately into a crowd. Our efforts are to bring people to justice, to identify these individuals responsible, and we're committed to doing so. But as I wrote to the letter of the editor, I think it was published today, we have far too many guns in this city, remaining in far too many of the wrong hands. And this is resulting in this violence that we see essentially about even of where we were last year, but recognizing that 2021 was a year that far outpaced earlier years where we saw record lows in shooting violence in the city. Lastly, in regards to our crime picture, I typically have not spent much time on property crime, but I wanted to draw particular attention of Angelenos to a problem that we're seeing in vehicle thefts, specifically with owners of Hyundai and Kia made automobiles, where this year we have seen an 85% increase in the number of Honda and Kia vehicles being stolen on our street compared to last year. That's 1,634 additional vehicles of those 2 makes. These are model years that are between 2010 to 2021 for the Kias and 2015 and 2021 for the Hyundais. The target of this is that it's become a bit of a social media influenced phenomenon, where on a TikTok video, there's what's called a Kia challenge. And that is, it articulates a means of which an individual can steal one of these vehicles simply by disassembling a portion of the ignition and using a USB cord. This video has been viewed tens of thousands of times, and we believe is influencing the theft of these vehicles. When we look at the overall 15% increase in motor vehicle thefts this year versus last, again, 85% of it is a result of the Hyundai and Kia thefts. So 1,634 of the 2,279 vehicles are those specific two models during those specific years. So the point of this is that we have put out a safety bulletin last week to our community members or the owners of these vehicles. And while the manufacturer does not have a remedy to fix those vehicles during those model years, they are taking steps to fix the new model years for this problem. The way the construction of the ignition system is that there's not an ignition immobilizer on those earlier model vehicles. And the manufacturers, again, are fixing that, but only for the new model year. So for the community, the challenge is, if you're an owner of one of these vehicles, we're asking you to consider the purchase and the installation of a steering wheel lock. Now, while you could also install an aftermarket alarm system, the steering wheel lock will offer both a visual and physical deterrent to individuals to be attempted to break your glass or forcefully enter your vehicle and attempt this technique to steal that vehicle. We are only recovering at this point about 55% of these vehicles. And they are being recovered not just in the areas in which they're being stolen, but again, the majority are being found in other parts of the city and outside the city. So I wanted to bring particular emphasis on this, given that it's significant impact on the instances of vehicle thefts in the city. And I believe it's, again, influenced by this social media challenge, and senselessness of that cannot be overstated. But it is important that in our efforts to prevent this, that we bring this to the public's attention. Lastly, in regards to our traffic safety, I want to report that this past week, we've seen an continued improvement on the 6th Street Bridge and its safety. The incidents there have decreased significantly, yet with our added deployment and dedicated resources there, this last week, we did see the issuance of 76 citations. So while it's decreased significantly, there's still remains far too attractive of a location for people to respond to and engage in unlawful activity. I am encouraged that with the cooperation and support of California State Assembly member Miguel Santiago, as well as the local council district, that we are securing plans to provide for additional secure fencing and deterrence, so people are not climbing on the arches, as well as some center traffic bollards to keep people from doing donuts and circular demonstrations on the surface itself. The lasting change is also to the 6th Street Park, the Arch River and Connectivity Project, also known as PARC. That location there, these added security features are being pursued, because we believe that the 6th Street Viaduct is just the next step of a larger community event, a community location for people to come gather and enjoy Los Angeles. But we want to do it in a manner that has, through environmental design, good preventive measures such as camera systems, fencing, and other controls that people will act within in a socially responsible manner. So again, I want to thank the Assemblyman, as well as the local council office, Councilmember De Leon, who's acted very proactively to help and assist us in this larger public safety need, as well as the Department of Transportation, which continues to provide traffic officers in support of our work as well. Finally, in regards to personnel strength, we have 9,284 sworn personnel. That's 176 under our sworn deployment numbers. I spoke earlier about our challenge in this regard. And our civilian staffing is at 2,666. Again, that's 39 personnel under our deployed strength. And our efforts in hiring the next generation of civilian professional staff also continues. That concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Chief. I just have one question. It's more of a clarification with respect to the double collision on the 19th of August. It was reported that officers were in pursuit at the time of the collision. Is that correct?
It's been reported that, yes, that's correct. So the key here is that why I'm providing the video is we will determine by our investigation, including statements by the officers, as well as their actions and the physical evidence, that their actions constitute a vehicle pursuit. And while initial remarks at the scene were that they had shut off their emergency equipment, that they had disengaged because of the suspect's actions, and then moments later, this collision occurred. The determination of "quote unquote" was this a pursuit? I think I know these officers were chasing this individual, attempting him to and getting him to stop, and then but for department policy, did it constitute a vehicle pursuit? Yes or no? And were the actions of the officers leading up to and in the aftermath within department policy? That is not a decision I'm able to make based on the limited information I have at this point.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Bonner.
Nothing here, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Soberoff. Commissioner Kalanche.
I have a quick question. Hi, Chief. On the COVID numbers, the 17 long haul cases, do you anticipate that any of these folks would be coming back, or has that number increased, decreased? Just curious.
So it's decreased by about, I think our long haul COVID cases were 19 within the last month or so. So it's decreased a couple. It is my hope is that these individuals will recover and be able to come back to work in a full duty capacity. But this is, as we're seeing in a society, some of these symptoms are lasting for quite some time and are causing or are manifesting themselves in a number of challenges for officers and for just a person in the community. So I can't, it's my hope is that they will. I'm grateful that none of them are hospitalized, so they're rehabilitating at a point where they are able to be home and see and be attended to for additional rehabilitation so that they can fully recover and be back at work.
That was my next question, just to ask if they were hospitalized or if they were home. Okay, just curious about these numbers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalanche. At this time, we will go to item 2 on the agenda, the public comment period. Madam Secretary.
Okay, our first speaker is Betty Lay.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items did you like to speak on?
Chief's report, agenda items, public comment.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, first I support LAPD. I support Chief Moore and his report. I'm happy to see that out of the 17 that are recovering from home, that there was 19, so that is a good report. I support all the donations, and especially on 4B on the recommendations for Medal of Valor, especially for mission for Officer Miguel Alarcon. I'm excited for him on that. And public comment mainly is I'm hoping that people start reporting on public comment from the heart positively and stop collecting money for talking on their scripts or whatever it is they're using. That's just ridiculous. I'm hoping everybody stays hydrated. We're in for a dangerous heat wave this week, and praying that everyone stays healthy and safe. And with that, I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Javier.
Good morning. I I just want to comment on something that I know comes up periodically here, and uh, I think we're becoming accustomed to these online meetings. And I heard some discussion this weekend that there were efforts to force the commission to go back to in-person meetings, and I just want to say that at a time when uh, there's still a great uncertainty. And when the chief gives his report about new COVID cases, that we're not out of the woods on this thing yet, and I think that we have better communication. I think even though people get to express themselves and aren't always polite, supportive, or otherwise uh, presenting the best image of themselves or about the department, that the commission seriously consider maintaining these telephonic online Zoom presentations, because it gives everybody the opportunity to participate. I think the chair has been more than reasonable in how he handles people who are not as polite as they should be. And I know that there's been discussion about that, and I just want to, as someone who participates every single week, to let you know that those of us that take this seriously and handle it with respect, understand the rights of those who don't. But I would urge you to continue to do the Zoom calls, and I think you're going to get greater participation. The only thing I want to suggest with before my last minute even starts is please go back to indicating who the next speaker is, because I think it saves a little bit of time. I know a lot of people have suggested that. I don't know why it is that continues to be a problem, but at least it alerts the person to be ready and to hit the unmute button, etc. And with my 40 seconds remaining, I say thank you, the chief, for all the great work that you and your men and women are doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have W. Blower.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, what items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Hey, this is the second week in a row that my public comment has not been posted. I complied with your rules, and I've continued to be silenced. Chief Moore, I even sent you a personal email about my public comment with a graph regarding the COVID. It's very clear and evident that the vaccinated are making up the overwhelming majority of the infections. This is very perplexing to me, because this vaccine mandate is supposedly about public safety. In your words today, you said the department is at 58% of the vaccinated were getting COVID since this vaccine mandate has rolled out. You are including Omicron along with Delta, Gamma, and Alpha in your reportings. This can be misleading to the citizens of Los Angeles, because we are no longer dealing with those other variants. I want to remind you that we are dealing with Omicron. Omicron came into effect into the United States per the CDC late November of 2021, which means your reportings from the beginning of this year would be the most accurate. It's no secret to all of you that I've been closely tracking your numbers provided by the chief. You are at 71% of the vaccinated from your reportings, Chief Moore, as of January the 11th, from the first time you reported this year to current. I would challenge any one of you who I'm looking at right now to go back on YouTube and compile these numbers. Or ask Chief Moore for my graph. It's very evident. I want to thank Commissioner Kalanche for asking some tough questions last week about the command staff going through the incident command system, making sure they're paying attention. Well, I want to ask you a tough question. Who's going to make sure that the police commission is accountable and listening? Because last week was an embarrassment. I want to leave you with this quote from Theodore Roosevelt. We must dare to be great, and we must realize that greatness is the fruit of toil and sacrifice and courage. I yield the rest of my time.
Madam Secretary, just a quick message to Mr. Blauer. I've instructed my staff in response to your email yesterday to provide you that information that you're requesting as part of a larger table of information that we track on this issue. So you should have that today. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is Gina Viola.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, what items would you like to speak on?
Chief's report and public comment.
Okay, 2 minutes.
So we've normalized police abuse for so long now, it's made its way into our daily life where abusers are normalized and covered for more often than not. A number of the recent LAPD fatal shootings were people having mental health challenges. Where is the de-escalation? I've sat in these meetings for years and listened to presentations about de-escalation trainings that you've prided yourselves on having over and over again. You're constantly getting more money for de-escalation trainings. Where is that? Where is that now? Stop killing people who need help. Agenda item 4A is a contract for upgrades and maintenance of LAPD's network of surveillance, the CCTV cameras. These cameras gather information and video on community members and are used to track people's movements in public spaces, as well as residential areas. The camera system LAPD has used since 2015 also includes radio components, which the manufacturer today advertises as including gunshot detection, a deadly and inaccurate technology that places microphones in communities and public spaces and sends cops to locations under the guise of a gunshot detected. Is this how people with mental health challenges are being killed? I would invite you to think about that, right? Along with all this de-escalation training. These meetings, why are we not back in person? This is ridiculous. Kids have been back in school for a year and a half. You're okay with teachers going into the classrooms with students, but we can't be back and meet in person. I've seen you put pictures of events that you've had in the Board of Police Commission room online, unmasked. City Council is meeting in person. These meetings need to go back to being in person with a hybrid option, and you need to do that right away.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have caller ending 3146. Caller ending 3146, you're on. Okay, we'll move on. Next, we have Steve Rogers.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Regarding the chief's report, 44 additional cases of the COVID-19, with 41 being vaccinated, that's 93%. What does that tell us, Chief? What does that tell us, Police Commission? It tells us that the experimental vaccine did not work, is not working, and you violated the rights of officers to compel them to take a vaccine under penalty of discipline. What is the update on those officers who have been sidelined, whose rights were violated? We need all hands on deck out there fighting crime, preventing crime, investigating crime. What is the update? We need some transparency. They should immediately be issued an amnesty and put back in good standing to wherever they were doing what needs to be done. Public safety should not be a partisan issue, and it isn't. I want to read something here. People of goodwill can certainly disagree about the extent to which our criminal justice system is flawed, and they can disagree about how to go about improving that system. But the idea that it, and I mean here the system, including the police and criminal justice, regularly brutalizes disfavored groups via overly draconian sentences and unjustifiably violent policing is nothing short of defamatory. We have people that come on here and they accuse the police of being racist, murderous. It is defamatory and it's just not true. And since I only have a limited amount of time, I'm going to recommend a book for everyone to read, Criminal Injustice by Raphael, with an F, Mangual. That's Mangual. Criminal Injustice, what the push for decarceration and depolicing gets wrong and who it hurts most. And you might, has anybody heard of this book or is familiar with it? Could you raise your hand? I'm looking at you right now. No, please get the book, take a look at it. You need to be educated on what's going on, the reality of what's going on, not the propaganda that you see in the police commission postings. And by the way, where's Mr. Blauer's comment? His is not the only one that's been censored. What is going on there? We need everyone to be able to speak, not just a few people that have a political agenda, are probably paid and put forward the same propaganda over and over and over again. CCTV does work. It prevents crime, but you have to have arrests and then you have to have prosecutions and consequences for crime. Example, put CCTV at a park where we know eventually gang members, criminals of all different sorts may eventually commit a crime in a park. People feel safer when they know that the area is being monitored, but it has to be actively monitored. There's a lot of information on that. We're not afraid of a surveillance state. We're afraid of criminals that commit crimes without any consequences. And that's all I can say. Stay safe.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have caller ending 4952.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, what items would you like to speak on?
I'm going to speak on all of them.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yeah, this is T. Guerra, Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. So I wanted to talk about the contract with Celplan. So this is a 3-year contract for an existing citywide surveillance system that LAPD has had and has been updating since 2008, and that is continuing to upgrade this camera system to a more advanced model, and that's what they're going to continue to do. So some of the things we already know about this. We already know that the cameras are predominantly installed in Black and brown neighborhoods, including along the Figueroa corridor, in Norman Houston Park and Harvard Park, and also in housing developments run by HACLA, including LAPD's so-called community safety partnership sites. So we understand who is being most surveilled by these cameras and the system, who is having their information gathered and collected, and it is Black and brown individuals and families, and that is by design. We also know Celplan has different divisions, including Y4Net, which makes the system LAPD is using now, which either already includes or has the capacity to upgrade to a system that also includes gunshot detection, which is a notoriously flawed technology that is nevertheless used to assign more cops to neighborhoods where their microphones are installed, and which has led to police shooting people at locations they are directed to after receiving an alert that a gunshot was detected there. We also know that cameras are not effective in decreasing what LAPD would call crime and are not effective in increasing people's personal safety or well-being. CCTV cameras have been installed in Jordan Downs since 2006 and at MacArthur Park and Skid Row for about as long decades as well, and they do not increase health or well-being for the community, but they do increase stress. They do increase the likelihood that a person will be criminalized and harmed, and they are used as portals by which to gather information and data from the community, which is used to criminalize and displace folks. And again, we have to be clear that it is the Black, brown, and poor community, it is the disabled community, the queer and trans community that is surveilled and impacted the most by these cameras, and that is intentional. That is not an accident. And finally, we know that community members are also asking for resources for their communities other than these cameras, but cameras and surveillance is what the city and LAPD chooses to invest in instead. We see in documents that we've gotten from LAPD CSP sites that on their crime prevention through environmental design safety plans that are created for each site by the cops, we see that even though community members are consistently raising concern and making requests about specific issues on an ongoing basis, that the cops actually make decisions to prioritize instead installing cameras instead of of those things that residents are consistently and actually asking for, some of which include things like parking so that people don't get cited and towed as frequently, so they're not having to deal with parking issues, adding speed bumps and stop signs, having trash removed, having trip hazards addressed, and other issues which remain unaddressed while these cameras get installed. So we see how time and time again, even though cameras do not make communities more safe and do not actually benefit communities, we see this prioritization of surveillance and mass surveillance and data gathering, and that is being put ahead of people's basic needs and what people are asking for, which is not what we are demanding and is not what we want. We say no to this.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Matios Cadane.
Hello,
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
all of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yeah, I just want to say at the top, this meeting of Latino leadership is just a counterinsurgency measure, another way for the LAPD to insert themselves in community and gain consent for their violence. And on the report on the accident, so this is a summation. LAPD caused an accident that led to the death of 2 community members. They'll be investigating themselves and finding they've done nothing that puts them at fault. The height of their accountability will be Moore's half-assed insincere condolences and the shifting of blame to the other drivers. Their transparency is limited to the release of an overly produced critical incident video. This is a sham. The notion of police oversight is a sham. For the $3 million for updating the cameras, now what do these cameras do? Do they help poor Black and brown Angelenos pay rent or feed their families? No, it criminalizes poor Black and brown people, like the last caller says. It facilitates information gathering. It also includes these microphones that can be used for gunshot detection type technology, something we found doesn't work and isn't even accurate, has been discredited across the country. But the truth is, like we've talked about time and time again, the LAPD's interest isn't public safety. The LAPD's interest is the criminalization and perpetuation of a carceral state. It's the perpetuation of violence against Black and brown communities. Absent from any conversation today is the absolute exponential increase in LAPD killings of Black people, because that's just a byproduct of all this. That's understood to be the norm. That's what's been normalized by the LAPD. It's the death of Black and brown lives and the expansion of their resources as they continue this campaign of harm and violence. The last caller was talking about a report. I just want to read an excerpt from, the community had come together and said, we need these things like parking, these other resources. The LAPD's response to that, word for word, was the following. By far the most pressing need is additional lighting and cameras. This would allow officers to immediately arrest and or educate lawbreakers while setting a zero tolerance stance against all criminal activity. This isn't the voice of an entity that means to restore or nurture a community. This is the voice of an entity that means to harm a community. It's explicitly there. They've chosen, y'all have chosen, means by which to harm us because that is your intent. Any notion that the LAPD provides safety through cameras, through increases in surveillance, is an absolute sham. Stop limiting public comment to 45 minutes, resume in-person meetings. This commission's a joke. I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Blue.
Good morning.
Good morning. What items would you like to speak on?
All of them, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you so much for your time and the platform this morning. 45 minutes is plenty of time. I feel that sometimes we just go around in circles and there's really nothing new being said. So 45 minutes is enough time. If you gave us an hour or 2 hours, all the callers would still be saying the same thing week after week after week. Chief Moore, I do want to say it was wonderful to see a graduating class this past weekend. It was nice to see those, those recruits graduating and happy. As one of the recruits said, coming from another state, said, why wouldn't I join LAPD? They're the finest division in the country. Whatever LAPD does, the rest of the country follows 5 years later. And I second that. Fine division, best in the country, best around the world. So congrats to them. I hope we can have more classes, and I realize the quantity, but hey, we'll get there, yeah, I guess defund the policers and abolish the policers are everyone's learning. Dumbest thing ever said. And now that we need to restore the city of LA, that's become horrible. I'm glad that you are deploying at least 200 more officers out in the Hollywood area. We see what happened to that 17-year-old, and it's shameful. It's shameful. And there was, a question asked last week by one of the commissioners that just borderline, just insulting when you have somebody running after the police officers with a machete and threatening other lives. And the question was asked, well, was mental health called? Well, I'm sure in a matter of seconds, mental health counselors can't be there, within 2 or 3 minutes. The officers have a right to defend themselves, to save their lives and save the lives of others, instead of asking, were police officers okay? Was anyone in the community hurt? We don't have police escorts. We don't have security guards. We are walking in these streets, especially Hollywood. We can't call a mental health counselor when someone's robbing us or chasing us or hurting us. So thank you to those officers, by the way. We appreciate their efforts, and we appreciate the effort that's being put into the Hollywood area, which is absolutely just gone down the drain. Hopefully we can restore it back to the wonderful site that it is around the world. We're tired of being killed. We're tired of being we're tired of our safety being in jeopardy. We're tired of being assaulted. We're tired of being robbed. The people that call in and say LAPD are murderers. No, we are tired of being murdered. We're tired of our community, fellow neighbors being hurt.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have MJ King.
Oh my God, that was hysterical. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
Good morning. All items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. LAPD is out of control, causing deadly crashes, killing 2 community members. Why did the officers turn off their emergency lights? The propaganda that just dripped out of Chief Moore's mouth, well, they were criminals and it's their reckless actions that killed the innocent bystanders. Not the responding officers who were chasing them and turned off their emergency lights. When is LA going to end police chases? This isn't a sensationalized TV show. This is real life. We need to end police chases. LAPD is killing people. Officers getting pulled over with gang members, and suddenly Stevie Sobroff is soft on gang members. Maybe he was communicating with a gang member who wasn't doing anything wrong. After you slander my neighbors, calling them criminals and gang members just by their zip code, and yet the gang members your officers are associated with aren't doing anything wrong? Is that because just like LASD, your department is run by gangs? We didn't miss that Freudian slip, Chief Moore, when you said murder, but meant robbery. Just justify why your officers are actually murdering people, right? The 6th Street Bridge Patrol is a joke. It's okay for Councilmember De Leon to pretend to be cool and drive a lowrider to open the bridge, but community members, real community members, can't enjoy it. And you don't even know our assembly member's name. What a joke. How much money did we waste building this bridge? And now we need to waste more money because you can't perform simple traffic control. Maybe we need to take LAPD out of traffic patrol. I appreciate Commissioner Calanche inquiring about COVID. It's a shame to see officers suffering long COVID as a result of defying vaccinations and putting our community at risk, but a risk they took. I would really like to see you ask some tough questions about each police incident. The commission wants to wait for more information, but how will we get more information if you don't ask the questions? LAPD is an embarrassment to our city. Fire Chief Moore, defund LAPD. This commission is a joke. That comes from the heart.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Nini.
Hello.
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
All of them.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yeah, so I just want to start off with the fact that, again, LAPD is asking for an expansion for the CCTV cameras. And if it's not enough to have requested 250,000 to install 33 CCTV cameras after they erected a fence, after they spent countless money in overtime just to, I believe it was over 2 million in just police overtime for the 3-day raid. Again, these CCTV cameras, it's really interesting where they choose to, where the city and LAPD have chosen to place these cameras, because you don't see them in parks in Beverly Hills, you don't see them in parks in the West Side, but what you do see them is, as folks had mentioned, you'll see them in Skid Row, you'll see them in MacArthur Park, you'll see them in Echo Park, all places that continue to try to banish and automate that banishment of unhoused, of everyone that really the state rules and other, and that's historically been Black, Indigenous, Brown, poor peoples. And so it's not surprising that this kind of focusing on putting these surveillance cameras and expanding the stalker state really is the intent and the extent to which LAPD and the state really chooses to prioritize property and prioritize the wealth as opposed to the well-being of the communities who've been here and have historically been looted, historically not been provided the same resources that folks continue to state in the safety plans that you have for CSP sites. And so it's not surprising that you continue to utilize that. And what's also really concerning is just not only the CCTV cameras, but the network that they also belong to. I mean, the CCTV cameras, the feed, that data goes into fusion centers, which are also our spy centers essentially, and that provide and share information with other agencies, and that are able to utilize that data to extract further information. As far as we know, and even looking at some of the CSP sites, we see that some of the photographs that they took have object recognition, which can bypass or hide the notions of facial recognition. And so that's also pretty concerning as far as like what, not only just this specific the cost of installing these cameras, but how it ends up becoming a catch-22 and how it ends up becoming a line item eventually, and just justifying and expanding more and more the reasons why we need to, or why the city continues to spend more money on policing if 3.2 billion isn't enough, and continues to eat at the city budget when folks really need is community support outside of the police, which we know continues to harm folks, and it's intended to harm folks.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have EP.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
All of them.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I wanted to, I guess, try and speak to the commissioners this morning. I wanted to just remind you that the reason why people are not signing up to join the LAPD is the same reason why someone like Gina Viola received 7% of the vote despite only spending $50,000 on her campaign. It's the same reason why Hugo Soto Martinez received a majority of the vote in CD13, why Eunice Hernandez won her district, why Nithya Raman won her district, why Aaron Darling won the majority of the vote in his district. And that is because people are sick and tired of having the LAPD eat a majority of the budget, this city's budget. People want something that works. People want something that is effective, that actually addresses, again, as I keep saying, when I call into these meetings, addresses crime, addresses houses, poverty, all of these issues that create crime or cause someone to engage in crime. And what y'all keep doing week after week is disrespecting the will of the people, ignoring the will of the people, even though your very job, even though you're unelected and no one actually thinks that you have any interest in performing your job, is to hold the police accountable and listen to the will of the people and listen to what the people want. Week after week, I see Steve Soboroff, when he decides to put on his pants for a meeting, when he decides to actually listen in to the meeting and not make a phone call while public comment is being held, disrespects the people and the voters who aren't able to make this meeting because they're at work, because they're taking care of their family, because there's only 45 minutes to make a comment. Week after week, I see y'all disrespecting him, and that needs to change. Your children and your children's children will remember your legacy of not doing what you are supposed to be doing. And that is to actually keep the city of LA safe. And throwing more money at the police will not do that. It has not done that. And I hope one day you realize how big of frauds you are and how you have had the opportunity to actually do something important and do something great and effective, and y'all have failed the people of the city and your kids. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Sarah B.
Thank you. I'd like to speak on all items, please.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thank you. So unpaid LA resident here, wishing the commission would provide more oversight and accountability to LAPD, because it seems like you really don't, and you just kind of go along with whatever they say. CCTV, as has already been described, infringes on human rights. People are not giving you their permission to record them, but you're still collecting that data and giving it and collecting it to who knows where. There's no proof that CCTV actually prevents crime. There's plenty of proof that it's used to discriminate against folks of color and other marginalized communities. My kind of next point is about mental health response, mental crisis response calls. Every year, LAPD kills a very high disproportionate number of folks that are in crisis and that are experiencing a mental health crisis. And then Chief Moore keeps wanting more money to go into police to respond to mental health crisis calls. I don't really understand the logic to this. It would be less expensive and more safe to divert this money away from LAPD to mental health professional crisis responders to respond to the mental health crisis calls. I also when I try to think of it from a police perspective, you've even said officers, have to handle so much already and be trained in so many hundreds of things. Seems like it would just take a load off of officers if you invested in alternatives to police and responding to mental health crisis calls, so that police officers aren't bombarded by so many things. And, in response to what someone else said in this meeting, if LAPD didn't have a chokehold on the city's budget, we could have mental health crisis responders come to these events within minutes, instead of having to depend on LAPD officers who have a very high rate of killing people. I also saw an ad online announcing new LAPD hires get housing subsidies. This is extremely gross, and it's disgusting how much this commission and this department spends my money and Angelino's tax money. I've checked the documents and records. LAPD officers get paid an exorbitant amount, so much, and that money could be better spent giving housing subsidies to people that are actually unhoused, or so many other much more important things this money could be going to. I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Clue. Clue Justice, you're on.
Yeah.
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
I'd like to speak on all of them. This is Pastor Q.
Okay, 3 minutes.
This is, I'm kind of perplexed, but also troubled to see so many people call and speak about Black and brown communities and think they're speaking in code. Okay. And it really, it's really what America is, right? It's really what our city is, what our country is. People are angry now because now police officers are being called into account, not recognizing, and I'm going to say this, I've said it before, that for decades, Black people trusted the police, attempted to trust the police, attempted to work with the police. When I was getting pulled over in Long Beach and the Carmenitas when I signed my record deal to Virgin Records and was pulled over on Foothill every single time I went to the police, to the office, or every time I went to the studio, right, when we were getting pulled over because it was 4 of us in the car. And when police pulled up to me in the Carmenitas with helicopters blaring and lights shining on me and guns drawn, saying I fit the description. Now we want CCTV. We've had cameras. We spend millions of dollars on cameras for both agencies. It's over $7 billion being spent on sheriff and police and LAPD. And all of these things, right? We just keep building and building. I just read in the newspaper that folks are retiring at an alarming rate. I'm wondering, how will we pay for all the pensions when we have all these officers retiring? We got to pay for their pensions, and then the new ones we want to hire. Then we want to subsidize housing for folks who to come from outside of the city, but we don't have enough housing for folks in our city. If LAPD was concerned about an overall public safety agenda, right? If they had an overall public safety agenda, they would be advocating for housing for houseless folks a long time ago, before they just started, before advocating for housing for people to come from out of town to be a police officer. How about advocating for housing for folks, just like the police associations, right? They're supposed to be a union, but they never advocate for the working people. They only advocate for officers, which means that you have basically one group of people that you care about, and you don't really care about the community, and you only care about certain communities. These are the things that we're seeing. If you're a police officer, you can't see that. But we, the public, are telling you guys that when we see you and when we see you operate and by your actions, we are seeing that you only care about certain people in certain communities. And when you act like you care about other people, it's just a show. You're not really caring. I yield my 4 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Adam.
Hello?
Hi, what items would you like to speak on?
Oof, tough choice. I guess I'll speak on all of them today.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Great. I was going to call in and spend my 3 minutes talking about COVID because that's always on topic, apparently, but I won't do that. Yeah, just echoing what other folks have said about, more CCTVs, more surveillance. Obviously, that doesn't create public safety, and you all know that. I don't know. I think it's interesting that people talk about, we should have different responses to mental health crises, but also I think it's important to point out that, mental health crises are an outcome of conditions a lot of the time. For example, we know that unhoused people in the city of Los Angeles make up at least 35% of all LAPD uses of force. And people talk about unhoused communities and mental health illnesses, but we know that, most people who are unhoused that might have a mental health illness didn't necessarily have a mental health illness when they became unhoused. So to speak about responses, how we respond to mental health and how the violent police state responds to mental health, I think this is a point that, the perpetuation of the continued funding of the exacerbation of the violent police state, creates and reproduces the conditions that create the crises that you all pretend that you're responding to. So, yeah, I'm just, it's funny that, people call in to this meeting and talk about try to detract from people from Stop LAPD spying, who, take time out of their day every week to like really school the public on all of these issues, and Pastor Q and others. And the only detraction that people can make is that these are paid actors. There's no substance to the detractions by, calling people Marxists or calling people police defunders. There's no defense of the indefensible. And the silly people that call in here and try, it's just laughable. They have no argument because they know that they're wrong. And the last thing that I wanted to say is,
Okay, thank you. Next, we have caller ending 0682.
And this will be the last caller, Madam Secretary.
Okay. Caller ending 0682, you're on. Okay. We'll go on to the next speaker, Elisa Avalos.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes. What items would you like to speak on?
On all of them?
Okay, 3 minutes.
I want to speak on the surveillance cameras. I just want to make sure that you guys get the correct data before you spend the money, and make sure that it's actually working before you spend the money. And one of the callers said that some of us get paid. I would like to say I don't get paid and I don't work for anybody. And another thing, in Sun Valley, Tahunga, why is there so many pot shops? Almost in every corner, there's about 2 pot shops per block owned by the same person. That doesn't make sense to me. And now in the city of Pacoima, they're allowing more pot shops to be open when we do have a drug crisis here in this community and a shortage of jobs. Now, David Gonzalez Park, it's going to be closed for 3 years in the beginning of January. That's across the street from the Angel Gardens. Where are those people going to go? There's parks nearby, but not walking distance. And I believe that we can fix the issues if we have more community engagement with the police department. And I would like to say, Chief is doing a better job, but I wish that he would be able to do his own job the way he wants to, the same way the sheriffs do. And by doing that, he would need to get voted in by the people for the people. Now, people are saying that there's bad cops, but there's also good cops. And at the end of the day, when we're in crisis and we need someone to come and save our lives, we don't think about the bad cops in that moment. We call 911. And there is a shortage of cops. And sometimes when I call 911, you have to wait for 20, 30 minutes. So to the people that are saying it's sad that, you guys are offering homes to officers, I'm sorry, but we need those officers. Now, there is a homeless crisis, but I would like to applaud Nuri Martinez, the president of the city council. She's putting in tiny homes for the homeless. It won't be right to give a homeless person or an addict a key to a new house. And how do we expect them to continue paying those bills when they're addicts? They need to get the help before you hand them a key to a brand new house. And we need more hometown meetings with our officers and chiefs, but not only with the supervisors, but the people that patrol our areas, officers that are not supervisors, they need to be involved too, because I talked to some officers and they don't know what's going on. And I just want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for putting your guys' life on the line. But I don't think it's correct for so many pot shops to be in one block in Sunland, Tahunga, especially near schools when kids are coming out of school and that's all they see. Thank you, and please be safe.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. And thank you for all the members of the public who participated today in the public comment section. At this time, we're going to go to item 3 on the agenda, the consent agenda items. Are there any questions that any of the commissioners have about any of the items on the agenda? If not, I move that we adopt items 3A, B, C, D, and E. Is
I'll
there a
second.
second? Thank you. The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, we're going to go to item 4 on the agenda. 4A, the department's report with regard to the wireless camera surveillance system. Then we have Commander Stephen Laurie.
There we are. Commissioner, can you hear me okay?
We can. Yes, Commander. Thank you very much.
Yes, good morning, Commission President Briggs, Chief Moore, and other folks here on the call. I'm here to just give you a brief update. I'll share my screen here on the Celplan technology agreement that we are requesting you approve today. Can you see my screen okay, Commissioner Briggs?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. So this agreement is a services agreement, and I want to emphasize a few things. First of all, the contract is simply an authorization contract. It is not a commitment to spend $3 million. It's a commitment to spend up to $3 million over a 3-year period to upgrade a legacy system that's been with us since 2008. It is a sole source contract because a lot of the software and hardware is proprietary to the organization that we're asking for this contract with. And it handles pretty routine updates like wiring, cameras that become aged out due to technology advancements, et cetera. And that's what the money can be spent for. All that work is approved task by task versus what's called a task order. So the work can't be done until the department agrees to that work. Well, I want to point out, since the commission, as you know, recently approved our new technology policy, we don't believe that this would be covered under the section in that special order that discusses new technology, because we are not acquiring any new capabilities with this. However, under that new policy, there will be an annual report from Innovation Management Division regarding the ongoing use of a whole variety of technology throughout the department. And we believe this technology will be included in that annual report because it has the capability to record. And since people's images may be recorded, we believe that we will be reporting it through IMD annually under the new special order that was just approved. Get my slides to advance here, which they don't want to cooperate. Here we go. There are 214 total units in operation right now under this contract. 104 are at intersections throughout the city to monitor and evaluate traffic and other things that happen at intersections, and 110 are at other city facilities. The cameras are capable of recording. Depending on the location, they save that video for 30 days or slightly longer in places that have upgraded recording capabilities. The cameras at the intersections are pan, tilt, zoom capable. In other words, an operator can move them around to seek a different view and can zoom in or zoom out if they want to focus on something in particular. They do not, none of these cameras have facial recognition capability enabled on them. Here's a breakdown of where they are deployed. The intersection cameras on the left and the other city buildings category on the right. You can see they're broken down in 3 downtown facilities. And then the Broad City building, which is the Van Nuys, some people refer to it as Van Nuys City Hall, but it's a city facility that houses government work out in the San Fernando Valley. So this is where we are deployed with these. And I welcome any of your questions.
Thank you, Commander Laurie. I have your presentation answered some of the questions, which was going to be placement. Thank you for that. The statement or the contention that the cameras themselves do not have facial recognition capability. Can you speak to that a bit more? Because my understanding is that facial recognition capability is not the camera itself, but is a software program. But please expand on that, if you will.
Absolutely, yes. You are correct that the facial recognition work is done by software. What I mean based on these 214 cameras is that capability is not activated or in use on any of them.
Okay, so the department is not using a facial recognition software when it utilizes these cameras, correct?
Correct.
And is the department the only city organization that is reviewing these cameras or monitoring these cameras?
City departments are the only ones, and that security services operates and can view some of them. So yes, between the LAPD and security services, we are the only ones.
Okay, do we not share this with any federal partners or state partners?
No, we do not.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Sobroff, I see you have your mic open.
Sure. Process or special request to activate facial recognition software, what would that process be?
Well, under the new policy, of course, that was just passed, if there was a request or for some reason the department wanted to activate that, we would have to bring it to the Board of Police Commissioners as a so-called acquired technology and discuss why, how that would work, what it would cost, what would take to implement it, and ultimately it would be this commission's approval or denial right. We could not do that independently under the new special order.
And so there is no circumstance under which no emergency where someone could say, we really need to activate the software on these 2 cameras during whatever it is.
Not without, no, sorry to interrupt, sir. Not without this commission's approval.
Okay, good, thank you. Second thing is, it looks like a lot of this contract is for service, for maintenance, O&M, et cetera, to keep the cameras working, upgraded, et cetera. Who's been doing that in the past? In the last 3 years, who did it? Is this an extension of an existing contract? Is it a switch from one contractor to another, or is it an additional maintenance service?
No, this is an extension essentially of the existing relationship. Since 2008, this same organization that initially won the bid to place these, and that was through an RFP, has been maintaining them. This is just an ongoing relationship and our request to continue that relationship.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Sobroff. Commissioner Bonner, any questions?
Yes, a couple, please. Thank you. I wanted to, this is a couple questions relating to the technology acquisitions policy and the comment that this is falls outside of that. First question is just to clarify briefly the scope of that policy, and what I'm reflecting on is last week and some of the questioning, the focus appeared to be on like court-approved wiretaps and things of that nature, and so I'm still trying to clarify whether that's really the focus of that policy, or I'm assuming that since you pointed out in this case that the policy does not apply, I'm assuming that there are broader situations in which the policy may apply besides a court-ordered wiretap or surveillance or something of that nature. So can you comment briefly just on the scope of the acquisition policy?
Yes, absolutely. And you are correct in that is the reason that we think this does not apply, right? And what the policy talks about, without rebriefing the entire thing, is its capability to store and access personal information in non-public places. And that's where the wiretap and the pen register and those kinds of comments come into place. For instance, let's say we were to ask at some hypothetical point in the future to activate a software capability to do facial recognition on these cameras. We would say that is more invasive and it is storing more personal information about someone who walks in front of one of these cameras. So we would say, yes, that does call into effect this new special order.
So again, let's say that, as I understand, one reason you're indicating that this contract does not fall within the new policy is because you're continuing, also one of the reasons is also because you're continuing an existing use that you don't believe falls within the policy. And Mike, so if this were, let's say if this discussion were about starting to use CCTV or this wireless camera system, if we were just starting this, would that be reviewed under the technology acquisition policy?
So if we did not have, let's say, any of these cameras and we wanted to install them moving forward, yes, I think you're right.
Okay, and then is the system used for any active investigation purposes? Any active investigation of specific people, or are the cameras out there capturing images that are accessed and reviewed only after the fact, say if some incident occurs and someone goes back to check the camera for investigation?
Both of those could happen. So if you take a hypothetical intersection camera and someone monitoring the police radio hears, for instance, that there's a crime in progress at that intersection, or a serious car accident at that intersection, or a brush fire at that intersection, they might go to an area where they can monitor those cameras and try and provide information to units in the field based on what they see. That varies greatly by deployment and division and whether there is someone available to be monitoring them in real time. So yes, it could be either of those. And I think the chief unmuted if he wants to add.
Just a comment that, it's not a play on words, but the application of the technology policy is this extension of the existing contract. We're going to report its use and how it's done on our annual report.
Right.
And so there is coverage, if you will, by the technology. There's just a host of technology that is in play that is going to be reported to you on an annual basis of existing systems. And that's coming to you, I believe, by the end of this year is our first effort of an annual report. So it isn't like this contract and extension doesn't have any commission oversight. It does, not just the terms and conditions here, but to the technology policy, the reporting of it is applicable with the annual report rather than a new technology or new capability.
Okay, that's helpful. And then, but to also to clarify further, if there were a new use of this existing technology, would that would also would come under review under the acquisition policy?
Yes, if we were to install brand new say we were to install cameras in a park or at one of our CSP sites or some other area of community interest or support, then that new installation is subject, in my view, subject to this commission's review and approval, and for the host of reasons why the policy was implemented: the costs, the benefits, the intrusion and balancing of civil liberties versus the public safety concerns that also may coexist. So that new technology, but these are all existing situations, and how do we continue the use of them? It's critical that we do. But how that's critical and our reporting of how these are actually used will be a subject to that annual audit, which again will be back before you, I expect, by the end of this year.
Okay. And just to close it off, I think I understand now, but I just want to make sure it's not the fact that the technology currently exists and is being used that we should be focused on. It's or excuse me, not the fact that we have the technology, it's the question of how the technology is being used. In other words, if there were a new use of this technology beyond what's currently authorized and approved, that new use itself would be subject to this acquisition policy, notwithstanding the fact that the cameras have been there for years and were already in place.
Yes, that's my for instance, the use of transitioning to where we were to add a facial recognition component or use that technology, that would, in my view, would come back before the commission for approval.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and then just one last question. Last week I was asking about the carve out for court-approved uses, and it was the second part of that I was concerned about, where there was where the court approved the acquisition or the capturing of some sort of data, but did not specify how that would be done. And so, like, take this case, if that situation arose, court approved the surveilling of an individual or a group, something along those lines, and didn't specify how that would be done. If somebody comes in and says, "Hey, we have these existing wireless, the system in place, let's use that." In that scenario, does the fact that just the court said go ahead and and you're authorized to surveil or track this person or people, that itself also brings us into that exemption, so it doesn't have to be reviewed?
If the technology isn't changing, so take the example I gave about the brush fire. If a court came along and said you can follow the movements of suspect X, Y, or Z, and we use the same existing technology we have now to track that person or follow that person, I don't think it would. But again, if the court said you now have the ability to use facial recognition technology to locate person X, Y, or Z, assuming there was no exigency involved, yes, then we would have to come to you and say, we now want to use this existing technology per the court to use this new capability. Does that make sense?
It does. One just small request I'd make, generally to the department and probably even to the commission is whenever this first report comes out is that we have sufficient time and process to understand and discuss even the nature of that first report that may come out, and that it not wouldn't, at least for this first lap around the track, so to speak. I don't think it would be a good thing to treat it too lightly, if you will, on a consent matter or something, when I think we all need to really continue to invest the time to make sure we understand the nature and intent of it and how it's all coming together.
Commissioner, I have tasked Director Rhodes and Commander Lurie, and I've asked them to include at least a member of the commission, as well as invite the Inspector General to that conversation. I think that the categorization of this, how it's segmented out, while we have a framework, if you will, I want to make sure that it meets the expectations of the commission as well as myself, in that we're demonstrating transparency, and we're demonstrating how it's being used and how it's being measured. So welcome the participation. I do agree it's going to be the first task, particularly in getting an understanding of this, getting our arms around it, given the varied nature of how we use equipment and technology. It's going to be critical.
Thank
And
you. Thank you very much.
Will not be a consent agenda item. We will discuss it.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Commissioner Briggs.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonner. Commander Lurie, your response to one of Commissioner Bonner's questions raised a couple of concerns and or issues, and that is the hypothetical of if the court had provided the department with authority to surveil a suspect, and if you determined that you needed to employ facial recognition on the existing CCTV cameras in order to do so, but before you did so, you would come back to the commission to seek its permission. Would that be, in your opinion, a closed session or an open session request for permission?
That's a good question. Looks like the chief's going to bail me out on this one. I'm not sure what categorizes one way or the other, Chief.
Yeah. So as a reminder, court ordered or authorized, if you will, let's do it that way, judicial review with the judicial authorized use of technology. The department is still going to report that. It's just not going to be, what we're asking is that it not be the specific case. As with the suspected individual, we would not call out and say, Mr. Moore is being surveilled in this following fashion using these court authorized techniques. So we would instead, I believe the framework allows for us to come back and speak with those in more generalized terms as to not to compromise any ongoing investigation.
That was my concern. Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Clanche, do you have any questions?
I do, if I can unmute myself. Commander, I have a couple of general questions, more for my kind of understanding. So who monitors all these cameras?
It's a multifaceted answer depending on where you are. In some places, no one monitors them. In other places, police officers assigned to a certain area may monitor them. In other areas, security officers have, like you've seen, a security monitor in front of them where they have like a grid of different cameras. And that can change with deployment needs and who's available to monitor them. But the bulk of your answer is that it's either police officers or our security personnel from the city monitoring sort of a bank of images that show these different locations.
So I guess my question then is, why isn't this in the Department of Transportation, like the majority of these, Department of Transportation or General Services budget versus an LAPD function? I'm curious about that. Since, I mean, we're not necessarily monitoring, streets or traffic per se. We respond, right? But I'm just wondering, like, why it's part of an LAPD function to purchase, say, cameras or / professional services to provide the software or monitor.
Yeah. As you're probably aware, DOT and other transportation entities do have large, networks of cameras that they fund and support. I don't know the origin back in 2008. The chief may know more about why these specific ones became ours, chief.
The general services as a department over the years has transitioned or transferred costs to individual departments that are utilizing technology. For instance, cameras at our buildings, at our facilities. Is something that's been borne by us. When we transitioned the Office of Public Safety out of the Department of General Services back in 2012, there were the cameras and maintenance of city facilities that then was also transferred. So it's been, it's city funding, but it's which department is providing for it, and there's still some sharing of this. I mean, that our department, General Services, still, I believe, still maintains some of the camera systems as well.
What about the intersection cameras?
Well, the intersection cameras, Steve, the commander addressed the intersection cameras as far as the DOT network versus ours.
Yeah, and I'm not the tech expert to ask this question, but there are some redundancies in that DOT has some fixed cameras at intersections that they use for traffic control. In fact, they have a fairly high-tech system where they can, in say, a natural disaster, monitor traffic and move traffic patterns in certain ways based on what those images are seeing. What we use ours for, especially with the pan tilt zoom capability, is fairly crime specific. But if you go to any major intersection in Los Angeles, and I would imagine many of these that I've listed for you, you will see several different entities' hardware up on the poles together. And the truth is, your point is a really good one, Commissioner, and that's probably an efficiency that the city overall could look at. But there are places where there are duplicative systems all working with different entities.
And at the same time, some of these camera installations are situation specific. For instance, we have a parade that is moving up and down Figueroa or Broadway, and the ability to monitor crowd movements, traffic movements, and to understand emerging needs or ensure public safety. Those are something that's going to be a public safety directed measure rather than solely a DOT function. So these do evolve over time. There's when you see these wireless camera systems and some of these pan tilt zoom and so forth, those are active investigations relative to, for instance, we've seen working with rail yard thefts and so forth, the use of camera systems. We've seen most recently the 6th Street Viaduct as an installation of a camera system, so to help or the pursuit of that to help us understand public safety issues there and respond as appropriate.
So not all of them are fixed cameras then?
Correct.
Okay, I was just curious about that, and you're right. I mean, thinking about saving money, it would be great to have an assessment of like where we could maybe reduce the use of certain cameras if we have cameras that provide the same function. The last question is about CSP. Are any of these cameras used in CSP sites? Because what my understanding is HACLA covers the cameras at the CSP sites, right?
Right. There are camera systems at the CSP sites, and I don't have the details for all of those, but for instance, in Southeast, there's a network of cameras there, but that is maintained by HACLA and monitored by us, but maintained by HACLA. So those are not these.
Okay, great. Thank you. That is it.
Thank you, Commissioner Kalanche. There being no further questions from the commission, I want to thank you, Commander Laurie, and I'd like to move that we approve the department's report and transmit it to the mayor for approval. Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll now move to item 4B on the agenda, which is the department's recommendation for the Medal of Valor. Can we have Police Administrator Hale, please?
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners, Ms. Farber, Mr. Smith, Chief Moore, and Mr. De La Guerra. I'm Anne Marie Sauer, the Commanding Officer of Administrative Services Bureau. I have the privilege of chairing the department's Commendations Board, which is made up of 4 additional members: 1 captain selected by the Director of the Office of Operations, 1 captain selected by the Director of the Office of Special Operations, and then 1 captain and 1 civilian commanding officer selected by the Director of the Office of Support Services, OSS. The Director of OSS is the reviewing officer on all matters within the purview of the Commendations Board. The Medal of Valor is the LAPD's highest honor and is awarded to officers who distinguish themselves by conspicuous bravery or heroism above and beyond the normal demands of police service. To be awarded the Medal of Valor, an officer would have performed an act displaying extreme courage while consciously facing imminent peril. The Medal of Valor was first presented in 1925, and to date, there have been a total of 730 recipients. We are requesting that the Board of Police Commissioners award the Medal of Valor for bravery to 9 officers from Foothill area, Metropolitan Division, Mission area, and Newton area for the incidents described in the report before you. Their courageous actions reflect the highest standards of the Los Angeles Police Department, and the bravery, decisiveness, and selfless actions of these 9 officers are worthy of the department's highest award for valor. That concludes my report. I am available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sauer. Commissioner Soboroff.
Just how else will they be celebrated? Will this continue to be at the event? And
Correct. They will be recognized at the Above and Beyond Awards ceremony in October.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bonner, any questions?
Just a quick question for the administrator. Can you just comment briefly on the basic process that you described that you chair?
Sure, absolutely. So we receive commendations for a variety of awards that the department issues. So we have different medals that are under the purview of the board, and so it ranges from the Medal of Valor to Preservation of Life, the Police Medal, Police Star. Anyway, so we have a variety of medals and awards, and so those commendations come to the committee. We receive, I'd say, hundreds every year for a variety of items, and the committee will sit down. We meet typically 3 times a year. If there's body-worn video, we'll review that. There's a narrative that describes the situation. We'll look at, what role each officer played, because in some cases you could have, a dozen officers named, but the board will really look at what part each person played in that. And in some cases, we, think maybe it's more appropriate that it's a bureau commendation. So it goes back to the bureau. It doesn't rise to the level of some of these medals. And then we make our decision, we make our recommendation, we send that up to my boss, to the Office of Support Services. So we get that level of review for these Medals of Valor, and then those go on to the chief for presentation to the commission.
And I think you answered also one of the other questions is if for those situations that are not included in what gets pushed forward, that doesn't signify any less merit of the commendation. It simply reflects that it may be better recognized or acknowledged in some other way.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Bonner. Any further questions?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Kalante. I want to say before moving for the approval of this report that these officers have demonstrated selflessness in serving the citizens of Los Angeles, putting their own lives on the line. And this is something that is rarely recognized today. So I'm very proud that we as a commission are able to do so, and the department will subsequently be able to do so at the award ceremony. This is the heart of LAPD, keeping the citizens safe and going about their jobs, not asking for the recognition that's well-deserved, but going about it every single day. And in some instances, they are called to do these types of acts that we subsequently recognize as being brave. So with that said, I recommend the approval of the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank
Motion
you.
carries. At this time, we're going to go into closed session. We'll commence closed session at 11:20. Thank you.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss agenda items 5A1 and 5A2 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
Do we have Commissioner Clancy? I see her on the screen here. Ah, great. We're all present. Ms. Farber, can you please read out from the closed session?
Yes, sir. At the regular meeting of the Board of Police Commissioners on August 30th, 2022, during closed session, the board adjudicated law enforcement related injury number 052-21 for tactics by vote of 4-0, tactical debrief for 1 Lieutenant 1, 1 Sergeant 1, 8 PO Police Officer 2s, and 1 Police Officer 1. For drawing and exhibiting by vote of 4-0, in policy, no further action. For lethal use of force by vote of 4-0, in policy, no further action, 3 Police Officer 3s. And for the non-tactical unintentional discharge, number 054-21, for tactics by vote of 4-0, administrative disapproval for 1 Police Officer 3, and exhibiting non-applicable.
Is that all, Ms. Farber?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Thank you very much. At this time, I want to wish everyone happy and a safe Labor Day weekend. Next week, our next regular scheduled board meeting will be September 13th. We will not be meeting on September 6th. Since there is no further business before the board, at this time, I move that we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you.